Hello, heathens, and welcome to Spinning the Wheel podcast with me, your melting but still quite frosty host, Megan Angus. And this week we are going to be looking at Imbolc season, full moon in Leo, lunar week number 3. All right, to get us up to speed, if you haven't already, go check out my Imbolc class on my YouTube channel. That will get you up to speed with everything that we are doing here in Imbolc season. But of course, I'm going to give you a little heads up on that stuff as well. For folks that are subscribed to my Patreon, you will get a workbook that goes along with this video, a calendar for the season, and so much more for everybody that's subbed at the $9 and up level. All right, so that class has already happened. Our next class is going to be coming up in March. That will be for Ostara. I will have more information about that soon. My next class is going to be Tarot Circle. That's going to be February 23rd. That will be for everybody who is subscribed to my Patreon. Recordings available for everybody at the Venus level and higher. We are going to be discussing Imbolc season tarot spreads and Imbolc season tarot spell work. And other types of magical work that we can do with tarot for Imbolc season and the work that we are doing in Imbolc season. Also in March, I'm going to have 3 more tarot workshops. I'll be doing a workshop on the major arcana, a workshop on working with reversals or inverted cards, and a workshop on the combination of tarot and astrology. So you can check all that out on my website. Sign up for my irregular newsletter. It's irregular because I never know when I'm going to put it out, but that's an easy way to keep track of what's coming up next. And side note, social media platforms are kind of failing us in a variety of ways. They're becoming more censored and censured, and a lot of leftists are getting pushed off of social media platforms, and a lot of people in the metaphysical world are getting slowly pushed off of social media platforms. So signing up for my newsletter is probably the safest way of staying in touch with me. And I would recommend go sign up for newsletters or check out, the websites of other creators and writers and metaphysical people that you like or follow. Like, go follow them outside of the social media platform that you found them on. Go support them otherwise, because again, those platforms are they've never served our interests, and they're definitely not doing that now. So do yourself a favor and go follow the people that are helping you in life. Okay, so that's enough of that. If you love the podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you to all my patrons. You can leave a review on your podcast service wherever you listen to this. And if you're feeling especially heretical, you can give it a 5-star rating. 5, of course, being an especially occult number. There's links for everything in the description, / patrons. You guys are already linked with everything, so there you go. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's get on with what we're actually doing this week. Shall we? All right, as always, to ground us in the wheel, we are in Imbolc season, and our witches' work for this season centers on purification, perseverance, renewal, and dreams. And we've talked a lot about that. We're going to talk a lot more about it. And when we look at the festivals that are happening around the world, past and present, we are seeing purification, renewal, and rededication as the major themes of those festivals over and over and over again. So first, I want to say this. I know that a lot of folks have had a really hard week. Last week was tough for a lot of folks. This week might also be pretty tough for some folks. So first off, good job for still being here. Good job for still putting up with this bullshit. And also, I want to say, it's going to be hard sometimes, no matter what we do. And I know that that's like right? Like that's a bummer statement. Like let's start out the week on a bummer note, right? Um, but it's the truth. And in a way, I feel like it is freeing and empowering to remind ourselves of that. Like, no matter how much I do my yoga, no matter how much I do my breathing or my meditation, no matter how much I do my mantras or my positive affirmations, sometimes it still just sucks. It just sucks. And you know what? It's okay to pout about it. It's okay to be bummed out. It's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to feel like my cup is not full. I'm not satisfied with this at all. In fact, that dissatisfaction, that discomfort, um, can sometimes be uh, something that we can turn into an incredible tool, and utilize it in really powerful ways. So, I want to bring this back to the work that we are doing in Imbolc season, because perseverance is a really big part of the energy of this season. It is the last part of winter. And, this is the month, February is the month that sees the highest number of suicides around the world, or at least throughout America. It's tough. It feels like it's dragging on forever. It feels like we are just floating in this very liminal, etheric, boundless space that is sort of this time out of time. It's gray. We can't feel the bottom of the pool with our foot, kind of a vibe, right? And it can get frustrating, but also despondent, right? Exhausting, um, and it can drag us down. And so I just want to remind you that you are doing a good job. And yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but it's okay if it sucks. It's okay if you don't like it. It's okay if you're like, but I'm doing all the things. Why am I still not happy? You're not doing it wrong. It's just hard. And that's what our magical practices are here for, are to hold us while we walk through the hard parts. They are not necessarily here to make it easier. They are here to hold us together while we walk through the hard parts. So, like I said, good job. If you're still here and you're still doing it, good job. Um, but sometimes it is really important for us to come up close to the things that are making us super unhappy, because it can foster bigger and better dreams. It can foster a deeper drive and determination to change the situation. Um, it can foster a real, I'm fed up with this and we're not doing it this way anymore. And that's a lot of the work that we're doing in Imbolc season, right? We're thinking about our portion of the tapestry and the threads that we are choosing or leaving out as we weave our portion of the tapestry. As I make my contribution to life, you know, part of the things that frustrate me, that disappoint me, that fail me are things that I'm calling out. Systems in my society, um, paradigms that people are forced to live by. No, we're not doing it this way anymore. We're leaving this stuff behind. And part of that starts with our dissatisfaction, our frustration, our discomfort. So, good job on still doing it. And yeah, it sucks. But here we go. So that brings us to February 16th, where we have a full moon in Leo at 28 degrees at 8:56 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day for everybody else around the planet. And with our full moon, we are at a culmination point in our lunar cycle. Our little seed that sprouted a little sprout, that decided to have a branch and become a whole vine, has now produced a fruit. And so in our lunar process, this is a point where we might see some results of things. And let's think about that with what I was just talking about. What are the results? The results might be my dissatisfaction. The results might be my lack, right? Like that might be the proof of where we are in the process. But just looking at this full moon in Leo in and of itself, this moon is very much about mother energy or queen energy, and stepping into that energy in ourselves and taking charge of a situation, or honoring those people around us that are skilled enough to do that work. In the Queens in Tarot, we are really dealing with our mastery of a thing. And with this full moon in Leo, it brings into focus the conversation between Leo and Aquarius, right? We're in Aquarius season. We're in the last days of Aquarius season, and we're having our full moon in Leo. These two signs oppose each other. Side note, shout out to the astrologer Amanda Moreno for really bringing this conversation of the opposing signs into my purview. It's like it's just, she opened the conversation for me, and it just it's such a fun set of symbols to work with. But for me, the conversation between Aquarius and Leo kind of goes like this. In Leo, there's an audience, right? And they're like, we want a star. We want somebody to cheer. And then we go, okay, I'll be that star. And we jump up on stage and we do the thing. We shine, we perform. In Aquarius season, we say, I'm a star. I want to shine. And our community, our audience says, awesome. We need you to shine here. We need you to shine in this way for these reasons. It's really about understanding our mastery, what we are a badass at, claiming that, being proud of it, and then immediately on the heels of that, understanding the responsibility that we have with knowing how to do this thing or be this thing or provide this thing. Whatever it is that we are really, really good at, we're allowed to be really good at it for ourselves. We should be good at it for ourselves. But also, we might be good at that thing for our community. And in that way, we get to perform, we get to shine, we get to be a master and show off how good we are at this thing, how adept we are, how much we know, what our capacity is, all of that stuff. And at the same time, to the benefit of our people, to the benefit of our community. Sometimes on this moon, we end up having a conversation with ourselves around where we're not doing that, where we're not living up to our mastery, where we're not displaying it. But it really is this conversation, that is centered on, where is it appropriate for me to shine? Where is it appropriate for me to demonstrate my mastery? And will I allow my community to respond to me? Will I allow that feedback loop to happen? As I said, there's a real potency in understanding that you are a badass, but there's also a really big responsibility that comes with understanding that you are awesome in some way. In theory, that awesomeness is for you, but it's also for the community. So in what ways do you share your mastery with your people or with your community? This moon wants you to kind of take a look at where you are in your process around all of that stuff. Like, what results do we have on that so far? Okay. With our full moon in Leo, for the lunar body, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, preparing for action. The back, the heart, the circulation, and the blood. And for our plant body work, we are harvesting, we are doing pest control and disease control, we are plowing and we are weeding and we are pruning to encourage above ground growth. And then later in the day, the moon moves into Virgo. It's really just a few hours later, actually, that it moves into Virgo. But we are going to talk about Virgo moon work in conjunction with tomorrow, or, the next day. Okay. So let us move now to the astrology of February 16th, wherein we find Mars conjunct Venus in Capricorn at 16 degrees. Now, this is interesting for a couple of different reasons. One, Mars is usually not the actor here. Usually, what we would be saying is Venus conjunct Mars. But here we are saying Mars conjunct Venus. Why? Because oddly, Mars is actually moving faster than Venus is in the sky right now. And so Mars is the actor. Mars is the planet that's making the conjunction happen. It's speeding up to meet Venus. So that's interesting. But the other reason why this conjunction is interesting is because this conjunction basically happens over and over and over again from now until more or less the end of the month. And these two planets will be conjunct on top of Pluto in a couple of weeks. And then are going to move into Aquarius more or less at the same time. And so Mars and Venus are doing this very interesting dance in the sky back and forth. And generally speaking, what does this mean? Well, looking at my notes, I have one word written down, and it is humpery. Yes, that's right, humpery. Mars and Venus are the planets that deal with love and lust, the energy in us that draws things to us, and the energy in us that goes and gets it. And when Mars is the actor here, we can definitely be pretty forward with our physical attraction to people. We may end up hanging out and having sex or fun, sensual times with people that we don't even really necessarily care about. We just have a really intense physical attraction to them. Um, a lot of that kind of stuff. So, for the most part, when Mars and Venus are getting together, there is a deep encouragement or a deep conversation around physical relations with usually other humans. This also can be energy with ourself, and we definitely could have a real cute and delicious love affair between various parts of ourselves that are more aggressive or more shy or whatever. And that's got a lot of really cute and sexy role playing and self love action in there. But also, some of us are not going to perceive this energy in this way. Even though most people will, some of us just won't. And for folks that experience this transit in a non sexual way, or at the times that you are experiencing this transit in a non sexual way, um, it is a really fantastic transit for getting shit done, especially creative projects that need a lot or would benefit from a lot of energy and drive and action. So dance projects are like kind of the first thing that come to mind, but really anything. Um, it's a great time to look at some artistic projects or creative projects that maybe have felt daunting in the past, and try to challenge yourself to step up to that thing and see what happens. Mars and Venus, as I said, are going to be conjunct sort of on and off again for the next 2 to 3 weeks. So you will have multiple days to play with this energy and to see its effects in the world and see its effects in your life. But generally speaking, it's a cute, yummy transit that we certainly can have, but we don't have it like this very often. Um, just be present with yourself. If you've got somebody around that you've got a pretty heavy crush on and you're like, oh my God, I think this is the time to get the hump action on, do it safe. It's still COVID situations, right? And also just be real with yourself about what you may or may not feel on the emotional level and what you may or may not feel on the physical level. Um, It's okay to lust after a person, and you don't have to marry them, right? All of that stuff. Okay, now let us get into the holy days of February 16th. We actually have a lot of holy days, but they are all kind of the same day. um, so, from the world of Asia, from our Asian friends and ancestors, we have the Lantern Festival, which for Buddhists is Meek Bochia. Um, for other Buddhists, it's Maga Puja. And for Tibetans, this is Chunga Chopa. This is the 15th day of the first lunar month. So, this is the first full moon of the lunar year. So, it's a big deal in and of itself. But a lot of Buddhists and Tibetans also mark this day as the first day that Buddha kind of gathered his monks together to speak to them and like begin the process of passing enlightenment on to them. And that idea of like coming back to our faith and receiving enlightenment through our faith or our spiritual practice or philosophical practice, whatever that is something that gets reiterated a lot in Imbolc season. So cool synchronicity there. And then from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have a big old pile of holidays that all are kind of the same thing. We have Lupercalia, and then within that we have Februalia and the feast of Juno Caprotita. So Juno Caprotita is a facet of Juno. This is Juno with the epithet of Caprotita, and basically it's kind of like horny Juno, Randy Juno, fertile, virile Juno. She's depicted with goat skins and all of this other stuff. And then scooching back to Februalia, this is sort of the center day of the month of Februa in the Roman calendar. It marks the full moon. And also, this is Lupercalia. And we talked about Lupercalia last week. It's celebrated on Valentine's Day now as a modern pagan holiday, but it always matches to the 13th, 14th, and 15th days of this Roman month. And we're marking that by the lunar cycle. So it just happens to be really close to the numbered calendar that we're currently using this year. The calendar and the moon are lining up for a while. It's kind of interesting. So what is Lupercalia? Lupercalia is freaky, awesome, delicious, good fun. I have a huge piece about this holiday on my website. But in short, this is a fertility and virility festival and a purification festival. And it really is rooted in the purification of the city and the purification of the fields where food is going to be grown for this next growing cycle. It's a purification of the spirit of the place. And by purification, we want to be really careful with this word because it's got a lot of baggage, right? So by purification, what we're talking about is clearing out old energy and making space for the new energy. When we are looking at this from the Greek standpoint, because it actually, Lupercalia is probably related to an older Greek festival called Lycaea. It is very much about restoring order. The purification is the pushing out of chaos. And that is also a theme that we see reiterated throughout Imbolc season, pushing out the chaos of winter, pushing out the chaos of Yule season, and bringing in the order that then spring and the next growth cycle will be able to come out of. So first and foremost, Lupercalia is about restoring order to the natural world, pushing the chaos back, bringing the order in. And so in that sense, a purification of the lands and the places, but then also a purification of the people, restoring order within the people. And what is that? Well, that is re-firing the spirit. We've been through the lands of the dead. We've been through this very dark portion of the year. And now the soul has to be brought back to the light and brought back to life. And so Lupercalia is this incredibly randy festival that ultimately results in a bunch of nearly naked priests in tiny little goatskin thongs running through the streets with goatskin whips, whipping people who have run out of their houses naked to be whipped to fire up their fertility and their virility, whether they were intending to have children or not, whether they're trying to get pregnant or not. They want to bring in that potency of virility and fertility to whatever it is that they're about to do, whether that's their crops that they're about to plant or whatever it is. So Lupercalia is this, we are getting fired up, people, and we're doing it in a really kinky way. So wonderful, right? That's fantastic. Yes, BDSM as an old time religion. Please, please. It's way cooler than the Super Bowl. Way cooler. So, the Romans kind of had it right in some places, but ultimately this does thread back to an even older festival from the Greeks. Again, big piece on my site that has a lot more information than what we can get into here in the scope of the podcast, but I highly recommend checking it out. It's way, way, way cooler than St. Valentine's Day. I'll just say that. All right, let's move on to February 17th. All right, February 17th, we have our waning moon in Virgo. So wild moon is in Virgo. This is in this particular phase of it, this is a fantastic time to take up a handcraft of some time, take up a craft of some kind, make something by hand. 1. 2, pick up a skill and try to improve it. Or do something that you do all the time, but try to get it as close to perfect as possible. And really kind of like get into the satisfaction of seeing that perfection, right? Maybe it's the perfectly fried egg. Maybe it is a perfectly made bed, a perfectly vacuumed floor, a perfectly formatted paper, whatever it is, like that kind of thing. And also on this moon, go support a local maker in your community. Or a independent maker of some kind whose artwork or creations or services or work you really, really love. And at this point, I would love to give a massive shout out to the sassy sorceress of the South, Kook Teflon, who makes the most incredible one-of-a-kind dolls. These dolls are spirits, they are familiars, they are devotional items, they are one-of-a-kind collectible artistic statement pieces, but they are also absolutely magical entities in and of themselves. Kook is an incredible witch, an incredible magician, and healer and medium, and also makes these really wonderful dolls. Highly recommend that you check out her work. And let me also give a big ol' shout out to the broom queen of the Pacific Northwest, Abby of Broomcraft. You can find her on Instagram under Broomcraft, as well as her website, broomcraft.com. I'm going to be teaching a class with her on how to make your own hand broom. And we're going to be offering it on Ostara. She teaches this class once a year on spring equinox, 2 days. She'll send you a kit. It's going to be taught over Zoom. Very excited. But either way, whether you attend our class or not, go check out her work. These are all handmade brooms and tools for cleansing, and handcrafted tools, demonstration of a skill set, all very tied into incredibly sacred stuff here at Imbolc season. So this waning Virgo moon is actually a really cool time to think about crafting things, making things by hand, the effort, the skill, the time, the dedication, the patience, that you call on yourself to be able to summon these things, as well as the people in our community that are making really amazing things for us to work with. Okay, When the moon is in Virgo, for our lunar body, we are resting, relaxing, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring our large and small intestines, our spleen, which is a type of filter, and our pancreas, which produces enzymes that breaks stuff down and also produces hormones for us. So, as I say every week, side note, as I say every week in the podcast, I am not a medical doctor. I am a doctor of the cosmos. I'm just some wild lady on the internet yelling about stuff. Do not listen to me first and foremost for medical advice. Go to your trusted health advisor. If you want to incorporate this information, get their opinion on it first and then go. Um, but when we're working with these parts of the body in lunar work, we can work with the metaphor too. We don't have to work with the physical body. We can work with the metaphor. And the metaphor here is things that help us digest, things that help us process, internalize, integrate, things that help us figure out the little details and where everything is supposed to go. Right? What is this useful for? What do I need this molecule of food for? What's it doing? That thing. Okay. And for our plant body work, when the moon is in Virgo, we are doing nothing to the plants. And when it is a waning moon in Virgo, this is an excellent time to attend your compost. So whether that's compost for your garden, compost for your fridge, maybe you need to weed your garden a little bit or deal with some of the dead leaves or dead branches in your yard or whatever. This is a great time to do that. Okay. Now, let us move into the astrology on this day, because this is actually some pretty interesting stuff. On this day, on February 17th, we have Jupiter in Pisces, sextile Uranus in Taurus at 11 degrees. Now, I talked about this in a podcast for my Patreons about the transit of Jupiter through Pisces, because there's a lot of fancy stuff there. And this sextile with Uranus is really kind of kicking off this Jupiter magic season that we're sort of going to go through for this whole year. Jupiter and Uranus have not sextiled each other in 10 years. They haven't had a relationship like that in some time. And really kind of the TLDR of this is that this transit stirs up in us really progressive ways to focus in on the routines and the limitations that are constricting our life and our growth. But rather than that feeling frustrating or oppressive, it's very illuminating. It's exciting. It's mentally stimulating. This is a transit where we can see the limitations and we might be, hopefully, really inspired with a bunch of ideas on how to change stuff. Or it becomes really clear in a positive way of what exactly needs to change or what we want to change. It can feel very optimistic, very progressive, and very expansive. Certain opportunities may arise. Certain opportunities may arise. Changes may happen more or less spontaneously with very little effort on your part. You may come to the solution of a really difficult problem that you've been working on for a while because you suddenly have this very fresh perspective on things. Either way, usually this indicates some kind of an unpredictable event that alters your plans for the immediate future, and usually it's for the good or it's ultimately going to be a favorable change. Your immediate future is likely to have a lot more possibilities than is apparent in this moment. So we want to keep in mind when Uranus is involved in the conversation, it's sudden, it's shocking, it's disruptive, it's destabilizing, it's unsettling. And there's lots of us that don't like that kind of stuff. There's lots of us that do. We're like, woo, I'm surfing the chaos. I love it. Keep it changing, keep it spicy. And some of us are like, no, keep it boring, keep it predictable, please, thank you. And so when Uranus gets involved, even when it's a positive change, it's sudden, it's destabilizing, it's surprising because it's coming out of left field a lot of the time when Uranus is involved. And so sometimes that can be a little off putting. So in the moment, if you find yourself in a moment like this, just take a second, take a breath, like, ooh, okay, that surprised me. I wasn't expecting that. Doesn't mean it's bad. It's okay that I'm freaked out. I don't have to act from a freaked out place. And when we have Jupiter involved, it makes things more. It exaggerates things, but it also magnifies things. So we also want to keep in mind, hey, let me keep at least one toe on the shore of reality, right? Jupiter is involved. Maybe there's a little exaggeration here. Maybe I'm getting a little too optimistic. But for the most part, this is a really cool, lovely, amazing transit to have, especially with the rest of the work that we're doing and the bigger astrology cycles that we're in, like, Saturn is squaring the nodes by sign more or less all year long. And so there's a real deep conversation between responsibility to the community versus resources and who gets to control that stuff. And that can all feel very like constricted and oppressive and like really funky and manipulative. This kind of a sextile, this kind of a transit could be like a door number 3. Wait, let me think completely outside the box. We can totally, not have this be this funky situation. We could have this be something really, really good if we're brave enough to go for this other kind of wild option that's kind of coming up out of nowhere. It's a lot of that stuff. When Jupiter's involved, faith is involved. So there's that. A little tarot for working with this sextile. It's really going to be kind of happening all week long. Jupiter connects us to the Wheel of Fortune card. Uranus connects us to the Fool. Pisces connects us to the Moon card, and Taurus connects us to the Hierophant. And if you really want to dial in, the 9 of Cups is connected to Jupiter in Pisces. And then the 6 of Pentacles is connected to Uranus being in the second decan of Taurus at 11 degrees. So collectively, these tarot have kind of a pathway through this. Yeah, this might feel a little overwhelming. Maybe this situation seems bigger than what you can fully understand. There is a leap of faith being asked of you here. There is also a piece of this that is asking you to bravely step onto the path, listen to your intuition, listen to your guides, listen to your ancestors, listen to your own sense of what is right and true. There is a bit of being guided by these big religious symbols and these big traditions as well. But truly, how it manifests ultimately in the 9 of Cups and the 6 of Pentacles is a little boon from above, a small investment now that turns into something really massive later. And maybe not reaching total perfection, but getting way, way further down the path of happiness than we thought we were going to originally. Just that kind of stuff. That's all. Just a little magic for you there. Last but not least, we have 2 holy days for February 17th. First off, from our modern pagan Wheel of the Year calendars, February 17th and 18th, we have the Feast of Neteret Bastet. Bastet, or Bast, is the cat-headed Egyptian goddess of love and sensuality and affection, but she also oversees domestic affairs. And as Neteret Bastet, she is much more presenting as kind of the head of household. And we have a lot of like hearth and home holidays happening at this time of year. I think that modern pagans put the Bastet holiday here because it's close to Valentine's Day. But interestingly enough, we have all of these domestic holidays happening now. And as Neteret Bastet, she is much more in charge of domestic affairs. So pretty cool. Whether it was on purpose or by accident, it was perfect. And then also on this day, we have from our Shinto friends and ancestors, Toshigoi. This is a Shinto rite honoring the kame and offering prayers of a bountiful rice harvest. The kame are manifestations of the one universal, primordial, and eternal immanent and transcendent deity Kuni Tokotachi no Kami. Shinto try to live in harmony with the cosmic forces of the kami. Okay, February 18th, our waning moon enters Libra. And this kind of opens up the weekend for us, which is sort of lovely to have our weekend lining up with a Libra moon, because this is a great moon to have a discussion where diplomacy is needed. If there's been tension in your friend group, if there's been tension between your coworkers, if there's been tension in your family, this could be a great moon to get everybody into the same room and work it out. In whatever ways are safe, socializing and getting together with folks to touch base and reaffirm friendships, very, very supported with this moon. Really cool stuff. Um, don't push it, right? And also, because it's Libra, at the end of the day, we want diplomacy and we want harmony, whether that's the healthiest thing or not. So we also want to kind of be present with ourselves there and like, are we having a real discussion here and being polite, but we're saying some real stuff? Or are we skirting around some of the hardest parts of this to just keep it cute and keep it nice? This is a moon that really supports getting into the funky parts of the conversation, getting into the hard parts, that thing. When the moon is in Libra, generally speaking, we all feel a little bit more inclined to listen to each other, to agree with each other, to see the other person's point of view. Even if I don't agree, we can find a happy medium somehow, that thing. So, if there's any of that kind of work that needs doing, this moon is going to support it and it's going to hang out all weekend long. So, very, very, very pretty, cute, nice, lovely, delicious thing in the background there, hanging in the sky. For our lunar body work, we are resting, relaxing, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring the hips, the kidneys, even more filtration and sending the good stuff back, right? And the bladder. And again, the metaphor here works just as much as the physical reality. So if doing this physical work is not appropriate for you, totally reasonable. Work with the metaphor. Work with the metaphor. For our plant body work, when we have a waning moon in Libra, we are not doing anything to our plants. We are dealing with the aesthetics only. So this could be a really nice time to wipe down your plant leaves and give them a good dusting. Spin your plants for more even growth. Add some decorations to your plants, that kind of thing. Okay. Now let us get into the holy days and the astrology of February 18th. We don't have any astrology of note except we just have the sun moving into Pisces. No big deal, just the sun moving into Pisces. When the sun enters Pisces, everybody becomes a little more spiritual, a little more drifty, a little more dreamy, a little more nebulous, a little more vague. Pisces is the realm of boundlessness. It's where we bleed into the all. And when we think of like the expansiveness of the ocean, as well as the darkness and the depth and the pressure, that's Pisces and Pisces season. There's a very profound but unspoken connectedness that can happen in Pisces season. And it's a really beautiful time to generate that after winter, right? After the walking through the lands of the dead, we are all slowly in the northern hemisphere coming back to the light and coming back to whatever our energetic growth cycles are going to be in spring. And here we kind of have this like moment of restoring our faith and coming back to the world of dreams and fantasy and sort of walking on that bridge between death and life. So here, the sun actually begins to do that. Of course, this is tropical astrology, not sidereal astrology, but it's still quite lovely. And then our holy days. What do we have going on? Running from February 18th to March 17th, we have the Celtic tree month of Ash. In the Norse Eddas, Yggdrasil, the world tree, was an ash. And I love this because one of the tarot cards that we work with at this time of year is the Hanged One, or the Hanged Man. It connects to the planet Neptune, and that connects us to the sign of Pisces. And of course, the Hanged One, Odin, hung on Yggdrasil for 9 days. The spear of Odin was also made from a branch of this tree. This is one of the 3 trees sacred to druids: oak, ash, and thorn. And there's lots of really great folk songs out there about oak and ash and thorn. And this is a great month to do magic that focuses on the inner self. As we have said so much for Imbolc season, it's also true for the month of Ash. Associated with ocean rituals, magical potency, prophetic dreams, spiritual journeys, the ash can be used for making magical and mundane tools. These are said to be more productive than tools made from other wood. If you place ash berries in a cradle, it protects the child from being taken away as a changeling by mischievous fae. We don't talk about the fae too much on here because I'm not trying to get their attention. But I would just say make sure that the ash berries are out of reach of the kid too. I don't know if they're safe to eat. So don't sue me. But how cool is it that this ash tree is here to help us with so much of our work that we're doing? It's so in league with so much of the work that we're doing here in Imbolc season. All right. Also on this day, from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Quirinalia. Quirinius was a god, deity, king figure that was depicted as a bearded man with religious and military clothing, actually very similar to the way the emperor is depicted in tarot. However, he was almost never depicted in later Roman art, interestingly enough. On this day, the Romans would toast spelt, which is a type of wheat, as an offering to the goddess Fornax. We have a ritual to Fornax that happened last week or the week before. In one version of the histories of this festival, we have the legend of Romulus, killed and cut into pieces by the nobles of the city, and each one of them took a part of his body home and buried it on their land. So this festival has something to do with the forefathers of the founding of Rome, and taking that power and pushing it into the land at the beginning of the growth season, just before the growth season is going to happen. So it's very much a festival involving a staple crop, a god, and a slain founding hero whose body parts are buried in the soil. We see it a lot. Here it is again. Also on this day, we have as a global festival and holiday, Nazi Resistance Day. And as a wise saint once said, when you punch a Nazi, the whole world punches with you. Let's move on to February 19th, shall we? All right. February 19th, we have our waning moon still moving through Libra. And we have no astrology of note for this day except just a super tiny little, like practically hardly even a little blip on the radar, just the Pluto return for the United States. That's all, just that. Uh, if you have been paying attention to astrology at any level over the last couple of years, you probably have seen several astrologers mention this event. People have been talking a lot about it for the last year because when it comes to Pluto transits, they really tend to echo because they're so slow. So we kind of feel them for years before the actual moment. We kind of feel them for years afterwards. There are lots of people who are way more suited to speak on this than I am. Again, I'm going to refer you back to the aforementioned Amanda Moreno at Aquarian Spirals. She's got a Patreon, she's got a podcast. Check her out. She's got work on Pluto's return for the United States. And what does that mean? What are we saying when we say that? Well, imagine that the United States has a natal chart. Pluto will be plotted on that natal chart somewhere. Pluto in the sky is coming back around to that place. And that was approximately 250-ish years ago. It was around the time that we were signing the Declaration of Independence, all of that stuff. Remember the Revolutionary War? Yeah, that. That, is sort of what we're talking about. If you want to get a sense of what does that mean, we'll look around at our country right now. That's what it means. When we talk about Pluto, we're talking about profound, unavoidable, unstoppable change, in theory for the better, but total transformation type of change. Pluto to me is very similar to the movement of tectonic plates. It's things that happen over hundreds or thousands of years, right? Really, really big time scales, but also with the same impact. Because when a tectonic plate moves, the whole world changes, literally, right? Whole continents literally change shape. Pluto has that kind of effect on reality, or it indicates those types of shifts within our reality. Big paradigm shifts, big mega reality shifts. And our country is going through a pretty massive wake-up call. Words that I associate with Pluto are things like karma, time. And I know folks, think of Saturn sometimes with those words, but I sort of think of Pluto as like the angry grandpa of the angry grandpa sometimes. To me, Pluto is a karmic equalizer of a sense, and not just in the retribution way, but in the sense that all debts will be paid when Pluto rolls through. Pluto is Hades, the god of the dead, sitting on a throne of bones and gold in the underworld. And Pluto oversees secrets. It oversees, things that are in the dark. And we are really having a moment in our country where a lot of, and not just in America, but really in North America, but especially here in the United States, a real wake-up call to the bullshit, incredibly destructive and gross and ultimately quite horrific power structures that are happening, power dynamics that are happening in our country. The modern day slavery of the prison system, racism, and we see it built literally into the architecture of our cities, right? So it's one of those moments where a foundational element of our whole paradigm is sort of being called out and pointed out. And Pluto is here to say, like, yeah, we can't do it like this anymore. And I'm going to take all that stuff out. And that sounds great, right? Like, yay, get rid of systemic racism. I'm happy for that. But that system is the system that my life is built on. I don't want it to be that way. I'm not happy about it. I didn't choose that. I don't like it, but it is that way. And as we deconstruct those systems, I destabilize myself. This, of course, is part of why mutual aid is such a big fucking deal, because we need to dismantle these systems. They can't stay. They can't. We can't keep doing these things to each other. But as we dismantle that system, the support systems that we do have, as unhealthy as they are, they're the ones that we have. We're dismantling those things too. So how do we reconcile that? How do we work through that level of chaos and destabilization and transformation ultimately? As I said, there's lots of astrologers out there Amanda Moreno is fantastic. Jessica Lanyadoo also has some work, and a few others. There's a few people on YouTube, but those are the folks that I actually really recommend, who have some really great pieces on what can we do with this work. And this is work that influences other countries. This is work that is going to stretch decades, right? Us course correcting our country is not something that we figure out in a weekend. Be kind of cool if we could. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but I'm not expecting us to do it either. So, but where can we play a part in that, right? Even just this conversation is part of that. Okay. Also on this day, from our Japanese Shinto friends and ancestors, we have the incredible festival of Hadaka Matsuri. This is one of the oldest festivals in Japan. And what happens? Well, thousands, like tens of thousands of nearly naked men clad only in traditional Japanese loincloths, and they are skimpy, face the cold to compete for sacred offerings thrown to the crowds at the climax of this annual religious rite. Dudes show up, they pay to get a little loincloth and some socks, and there's like one guy in the corner that ties your loincloth on, and he apparently cinches it nice and tight. And then they ply you with beer and sake, and then at some point they shove you out into the cold, and it's literally like 30 degrees outside, and barrage your way through the town, haranguing the locals, and people are cheering them on and all of this stuff, and they finally get to the temple, and there's somewhere between 15 to 20,000 of these dudes in this festival, honest to God. They get to the temple, into the temple square, and they are just pushing and shoving and wrestling with each other. And at some point, the priests come out and they start throwing out these tiny, tiny handfuls of little sticks. And the sticks have symbols on them, and there's prosperity and wealth and good luck and fortune and things like that on the sticks. And you're trying to get a stick, and so you're gonna just casually fight naked in the cold against 20,000 dudes to get a tiny stick. For luck. I love it. It's so good. I mean, again, to me, I see so many Imbolc symbols in this. The cold, the purification stuff, right? The rigorous physical experience, the waking up, the nudity, all of it. It's all in there. I absolutely love it. It's so good. Yay. All right, let's move on to February 20th. But before that, how about an ad? Okay. If you love this podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you a bajillion billion times. See, the sirens are going off even as I say it. Thank you so much to my patrons. You guys don't even know. You don't even know. Thank you so much. You can sub for as little as $1 if you just think this podcast is dope and you want to support it. I don't run ads on the podcast, partly because I don't want to, and partly because I won't get paid even if I do. So screw them, man. You can sub, as I said, for as little as $1 or $5, even if you want to just support the podcast. And this is plenty of information. But if you want even more information, extra podcasts, extra videos, extra information about the Wheel of the Year, magical practices, tarot, etc., subbing at the higher levels, you get all kinds of cool free stuff. And at the even higher levels, you get free readings every month with me, to be able to integrate all of this information into your personal life based on what's going on in your natal chart and all of that other good stuff. Join and change your life forever. Or, whatever. Thanks so much for the support. If you can't support financially, I completely understand, because life sucks on Earth right now. It's too expensive for everything. Tell a friend, share it on social media, give it a thumbs up. If you're feeling especially hedonistic, you can leave a rating or a review. All right, that's the end of the ad. Let's get back to the podcast. Okay, February 20th, we have our waning moon in Libra actually hits the disseminating degree. So this is disseminating moon in Libra at 16 degrees at 1:50 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the night, morning, and day for everybody else around the planet. Um, and this is our moon that we've been working with for the last few days. So I don't really have much to say about it, but it actually hits the degree here on February 20th. But I just want to remind you that when we are in the disseminating phase of the moon, that fruit that appears at the full moon ripens at the disseminating moon. And there's a big difference between ripe and unripe fruit, right? I love that we get this at the end of this weekend, right? We have this encouragement with the Libra moon to try to do some diplomacy efforts, right? To have good faith efforts with the people in our community, our coworkers, our friends, our family, our lovers, whoever it is, to work some shit out. To let's call up some of the funky stuff, let's get it out on the table, air it out, and ultimately let's try to find a resolution that works for everybody with this thing. Now we have the fruit ripening. It's time to reap the rewards. So there very much is a sense on February 20th of, if you do engage in these conversations, you really are going to come to some good some concrete solutions through those conversations. I love that stuff. I love it when it lines up like that. It's so cool. Okay. We have no astrology of note for February 20th, and we only have one little itty bitty tiny holy day on February 20th from our Roman friends and ancestors. We have Amberbium or Amberbium, and this is or was a ceremony to purify the city, the herbs as a whole. So yeah, herb as in urban and suburban, that word or idea has been around for a really, really long time. But this is yet another purification festival, purification ceremony, for purifying the city in this particular context. That's everything for February 20th. Let's move on to the 21st. All right, February 21st, our waning moon enters Scorpio. So now, as the moon turns, we turn our crafting into our craft. This is a moon to consider: what is your witchcraft? What is your magic? And what stirs you to get your magic out and use it? In what ways does your craft comply with the ethics around you? And in what ways does it transgress those ethics? And if you're wondering what I might mean by that, or if you're thinking, my magic wouldn't transgress ethics, let me ask you this question. If a loved one was in danger and you knew that you could use your magic to save them, what would you be willing to do? Right? All of a sudden we're like, oh, well, no bets, all bets are off at that point, right? No holds barred. I'll do anything. Well, think about it. It's Scorpio, right? It gets a little spooky here. We've got that Pluto situation with the United States return. And this is kind of a moment to think about our personal power in the face of these massive power structures, these massive power dynamics. We don't necessarily see ourselves in those power dynamics, right? And I don't think that we should judge ourselves necessarily in the same way that we judge those power dynamics. That's not at all what I'm saying. I wouldn't ever suggest that you think of yourself in the way that you think of the United States. It's truly, there's no way you could have been as bad. But but all the same, we want to think about what happens when we get power. What do we do with our power? Do we hide it? Do we fear it? Do we scare other people with it? Do we only pull it out in absolute emergencies? Do we create a bunch of rules and structures and restrictions for ourselves around it? Or do we just go wild and do whatever the hell we feel like? Or what? This is a moon for kind of digging in on that conversation with yourself of, what is my power? What does it look like? And what do I do with it? And what would I really be willing to do with it. You don't have to tell anybody what your answers are to your questions, but you should be honest with yourself about that stuff. We're not working on changing it or calling it out or transmuting it into something else right now. We're just naming it. We're just looking at it. We're just saying, that's in me and that's natural because I'm a human. Really important to remember that. Nobody is a saint except for the saints, and I've never personally met one, so I'm a little skeptical about them. But this is that moon to think about it. What is my power? And if push came to shove, what would I be willing to do with it? And you know, when am I actually summoning it and for what? For our lunar body, we are resting, nourishing, relaxing, supporting, or otherwise restoring the organs and the processes of pleasure, reproduction, and waste management. Sex and death, baby. That's what's up when we're dealing with Scorpio stuff. And for our plant body work, we are planting, transplanting, or grafting for flowering bulbs, biennials and perennial flowers and vegetables and fruits and any other crops that we might be planting that are going to be growing below ground, like onions and carrots and potatoes and stuff like that. Perfect for that. No astro to speak of otherwise. So let us get directly into the holy days of February 21st. All right, from our Greek friends and ancestors, running from February 21st to the 27th, we have the Lesser Eleusinian Mysteries. Now, these would take place every year here at the very end of winter, and they were a multi-part festival, way less fancy than the Greater Mysteries that we talk about in fall. Way less fancy, but cool all the same. So basically, what would happen at the lesser mysteries was an initiatory practice that got people ready to perform or participate in the greater mysteries later on. And in fact, people would participate in the lesser mysteries in spring, and then it wouldn't be until the following fall, so not that same year, but a year later, that they would actually be allowed to participate in the greater mysteries. In the lesser mysteries, they're taught what they're going to say. They're, the call and response stuff. They're generally walked through what the rituals are going to look like and how things are going to go, but there's still lots of things that they're not told. But yeah, it's kind of like the preamble. It's like the pre-funk to the greater mysteries. But then also there's a whole bunch of other really cool stuff that happens at the lesser mysteries where this great chamber is opened in the ground and all of these sacrifices are made of like little baby pigs and grains and other stuff that gets thrown into this pit with all of these snakes. And then at this time of year, the pit is opened. And it's opened in relationship to a lot of those death and ancestor festivals that we see the Greeks and the Romans participating in also at this time of year. So it's kind of like the world of the dead is sort of being opened up. And that fall, that compost of all those sacrifices made in fall the year before, are scooped up and passed out to people, and that compost is then scattered out over the fields. And so there's this like energy that builds underground as folks are sort of walking through the lands of the dead during Yule season, and then here before the growth season of spring during the month of flowers, Anthesterion, all of these these sacrifices are brought back up and used as compost and brought out to the fields again and carrying that energy through. We see a very similar practice, not with the same stuff, but with the same idea with the corn dolly that is made by pagans at the end of Lughnasadh season or the end of Mabon season, with the last rushes of the crops that are being brought in. Sometimes it's the very first ones, sometimes the very last ones, whatever, but it's made from those final pulls out of the fields. And the corn dolly is made and then it's carried through, right? It's kept in a special place through Samhain season, Imbolc, Yule season, and then in Imbolc season, it's brought back out again, and the corn dolly is placed in the first furrow that is dug at the beginning of the new growth cycle. And there very much is this idea of carrying the energy over from the old season into the new season when it comes to this natural virility, fertility energy. So cool. Okay. Also happening from February 21st to February 25th, from our Yoruba friends and ancestors, we have the Olokun Festival. Olokun is an Orisha spirit in the Yoruba religion. Olokun is believed to be the parent of Aje, the Orisha of great wealth and the bottom of the ocean. Olokun is revered as the ruler of all bodies of water and for the authority over other water deities. Olokun is highly praised for their ability to give great wealth, health, and prosperity to their followers. Communities in both West Africa and the African diaspora view Olokun variously as female, male, or androgynous. So here now we're just barely 1 foot, 1 toe into Pisces season, and we already have deities showing up that are these great oceanic deities. Also on February 21st, we have starting the week of Aromantic Awareness Week. This is a global festival or global awareness week. Aromantics or eros are folks who feel sexual attraction for people, but they don't have romantic connections, generally speaking. And so this is just an awareness week that folks like this exist, and this is natural and healthy and normal, and people do it. It's kind of that friends with benefits sort of thing, right? Also on this day from our friends and ancestors in Iceland, we have Konudagar. This is Woman's Day, and it falls on the first day of Goa, which is an Icelandic or Old Norse calendar system, according to the Old Icelandic calendar. Woman's Day was traditionally dedicated to the mistress of the house or the farm. The first references to it were made in approximately 1850. Today, men commemorate Women's Day by giving flowers or gifts to significant women in their lives. And this is roughly equivalent to Valentine's Day, but there is a partner day to this that we celebrated last month called Bonardagar, and that begins on the first day of Thori. I don't know. We didn't talk about it last month. We talked about it at Imbolc. So that's Men's Day, and this is Women's Day. So we have sort of the two polarities of energy there. Also on this day from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Feralia. This is the end of Parentalia, which we talked about last week. Parentalia is an ancestor festival where there's lots of ancestor worshiping and appeasing of the spirits of the dead to get them to go back to the lands of the dead. Feralia was an ancient Roman public festival celebrating the manes, the Roman spirits of the dead, particularly the souls of deceased individuals. The spirits of the dead could be the dead of all kinds of things, heroes, teachers, mentors, like folk figures, but also like the spirit of a place, the spirit of a building, the spirit of a tool even, were all honored by the Romans. And so this in particular is about spirits of humans, of actual individual humans. Roman citizens were instructed to bring offerings to the tombs of their dead ancestors, which consisted of at least an arrangement of wreaths, a sprinkling of grain and a bit of salt, bread soaked in wine, and violets scattered about. Additional offerings were permitted, however, the dead were apparently appeased with just the aforementioned. Pretty cool stuff. And then also on this day from our Orthodox Catholic friends and ancestors, we have Triodion. The Triodion is the liturgical book used by Eastern Orthodox Catholics, and it contains all of the etiquette and traditional practices for fasting during Pascha or Easter and the whole Lent season, and the weeks leading up to that stuff. And fasting is a thing that has lots of baggage added to it. I tend to lose followers every year during Imbolc season because I talk about fasting and detoxing and how funky that stuff is. Like, there's so much misinformation and disinformation in the alternative health world about what fasting is and what it does and all of that stuff. All of that said, again, not a doctor, not a nutritionist either, so what do I know? But what I do know is that fasting is something that has been used as a religious and spiritual tool for a very, very long time. I will not talk about fasting in terms of dieting or detoxing the body because, generally speaking, modern science doesn't think that it really does much for us in terms of that stuff. It might make you feel better, but it probably didn't really do anything to your body. But I know, hot take, I know. But fasting for spiritual purposes and religious purposes is something that folks have done for a really, really long time. And there is a symbolic idea of purification that can happen through fasting. There's also a symbolic idea of building power through fasting. So it isn't just about emptying out. Sometimes it's about gathering in too. So all of that stuff. But fasting is a big deal during Lent and Easter season for some folks. And so this is a moment dedicated to the book about that. Okay, February 22nd. Our waning moon is still hanging out in Scorpio, so we are still doing that work. We have no astrology of note for this day, so let us scooch directly into the holy days. We have on February 22nd the heliacal rising of the fixed star Sadalmelik. And this name comes from the Arabic phrase Saad al-Malik, which means the luck of the king. And we've had several of these fixed stars all kind of in a row. We had a few last week, I think maybe the week before too, that all have about something to do with luck, wishes, the luckiest one, all of that stuff. Really sitting interesting with, our Imbolc symbolism, right? Of dreaming, being in the fantasy, pulling in the most utopian vision that we can as we get ready to manifest whatever it is that we're going to manifest in the next growth cycle. So we're calling in some luck here for sure. And, luck is certainly a word that I always associate with Jupiter. So also pretty cool to have that sextile here in the midst of all of these fixed stars that are connected to luck and luckiness. Okay, we have one other holy day for this day, and it is from our Roman friends and ancestors, and this is the Festival of Caristia, also known as Cara Cognatio. This was an official but privately observed holiday that celebrated the love of family with banqueting and gifts. Now, it is hilarious that we have this holiday here and we have our moon in Libra because, we're talking about doing very diplomatic work, getting the family together, hashing some things out, that sort of thing. Okay. So on this festival, families gathered to dine together and offer food and incense to the Lairs as their household gods. It was a day of reconciliation when disagreements were to be set aside. But the poet Ovid observes satirically that this could be achieved only by excluding family members who would cause trouble. The Caristia was a recognition of the family line as it continued into the present and among the living. There were distributions of bread and wine, as well as bonuses or tips or tokens of appreciation. Another poet, Marshall, has a pair of poems on gift giving for this holiday. And in one, he offers a sort of non-apology apology to his relatives Stella and Flaccus, explaining that he had sent them nothing because he didn't want to offend the others who ought to receive a gift from him and wouldn't. Classic Roman bullshit right there, honestly. Like, this is a day for getting together with family, and it will be successful if you don't let the assholes know what time dinner is. And you should give gifts, except I'm not giving anything to anyone, and so too bad. I love it. It's so good. But, here again we see that really wild lining up, right, of the astrology and the lunar work and these ancient holidays and modern holidays where, everything is like pointing all to the same thing. Such good stuff. Okay. Let's hit the roundup for the week. Okay, so our lunar phases for this week are moving from Leo to Scorpio. So we are still working through that fixed sign energy, holding down the middle of winter as we pass through the center portion of this season. And then after this full moon, um, you know, as we talked about with the astrology, we step directly into Pisces season. So on February 16th, we have a full moon. And then also on February 16th, we have Mars in Capricorn conjunct Venus at 16 degrees. And we know that that conjunction is going to be something that's on and off every other day or every couple of days, all the way through the end of the month. So we can kind of think of Mars and Venus being conjunct at the degrees from 16 basically to 29 Capricorn every day this month or for the rest of this month, more or less. It's really cool astrology. And then on February 17th, we have Jupiter in Pisces, sextile Uranus in Taurus at 11 degrees. First time in 10 years that these planets have had a conversation like this. Pretty cool stuff. Pretty lucky stuff. And then on February 18th, we have the sun moving into Pisces. So we then are going to move into the last 4 weeks of winter officially. We get to say that now. I know that's really sad for some people, and it's really exciting for some people. And it's one of my favorite things about working the wheel is that we get to chop the time up into these, actually pretty manageable segments, right? Like, wait, 4 weeks? I can handle 4 weeks. And it's nice to know that at this point, again, in winter, where it really feels like we might be dragging through the season at this point. What's coming up next week? A whole bunch of little astrology. Mars and Venus and Mercury are doing a whole bunch of stuff all week long, and it's all real quick flash in the pan stuff. Remember, a lot of that is Mars and Venus hanging out with each other, but there's going to be a little of other stuff. Mars is going to sextile Neptune. Venus is then obviously going to sextile Neptune. Mercury is going to come into a square with Uranus. And then there's going to be some conversation between Mars and Venus and the North Node in Taurus next week. But we will get into all of that stuff next week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks so much for sharing this. You guys have been sharing the bejesus out of this podcast, and I really appreciate it. It's freaking cool. Good luck with the Pluto return for the USA. As I mentioned before, just to wrap it up, Amanda Moreno, Aquarian Spirals, has information on the Pluto return for the US. astrologyhub.com/Pluto return is another good piece of information to check out for what this is all about. It absolutely might be stuff that you do not see in your personal life in any kind of a real way, but you absolutely see it play out in the world. But whatever happens to our country while we're living here, it's ultimately going to be affecting us. So, but hey, it's time for the secrets to be revealed. Our country is born on the back of genocide, slavery, and a lot of really horrible, awful shit that we still do today. And it is time to turn on the light in the basement and let the cockroaches scatter. That's what's up. Goddess bless America, for real. All right, my heathens, good luck this week. Keep the faith. Blessed be.